Hey friends, this is Craig Simon with the Malden Church of Christ.
Darrell Simon.
We've had a couple weeks where we've been off.
Yeah.
Not really a holiday break, more of a get the vehicles running break.
Right.
So it was just anyway. Got your car running, got the van running. Some of it was waiting on parts.
Yeah.
So at the same time that people are waiting on their holiday presents to arrive, we're waiting on some parts to get there so we can get the vehicles running. So we had anyway, some of it took a little bit longer than it should have. One of the parts was sent back and forth between Cape and St. Louis 2 different times. So Cape to St. Louis to Cape to St. Louis to Cape, and then
Fell in that black hole somewhere.
fell in the black hole. So but anyway, we've really not taken an intentional break. It was just I was busy working on vehicles, had other things that just needed to get done. So those things are done now. Happy New Year!
Yeah, Happy New Year.
So it's a new year. We wrapped up our In the Beginning series, and we're getting ready to start a new series. Dad, if you want to think about just maybe. Well, which one do you want to do? Do you want to look forward, or do you want to look back first?
It doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do.
Okay, so let's go back like kind of over the last couple weeks in our series back to the beginning. We talked about Noah and the flood.
Right.
There were several weeks there where when we did Cain and Abel, we did that recap. You went to the New Testament, looked at Noah in the New Testament.
Yeah, Cain in the New Testament, then Noah.
Yeah, Cain and Abel in the New Testament, and then Noah. What were some of the lessons you brought out in your sermon? You did some of the different S words that we read about in the New Testament text. What do we learn from Noah? Looking at some of the New Testament text.
Well, I'm kind of like you. It's been 2 weeks. So I'm kind of
been 2
have
weeks.
Have to think a little bit about it now. But
I've slept since then. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know if I can remember all the S words or not.
You don't have to remember all of them.
But I can sure tell you what we learned from the New Testament, especially with Noah. I mean, let's make sure our lives are right with God, because we never know what might happen in life. And
that's a good New Year's lesson too, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
We have just started a new year, but our life is not certain.
Yeah, that's true.
Our tomorrow is not certain.
Right. But Noah was preaching there to people in 120 years, Genesis chapter 6 and verse 3, and my hat's off to Noah, I guess I can say it that way, because he wanted to make sure his household was saved.
Yeah.
And really the word went out to everybody, but they just turned it down. And he said, listen, some things are going to happen here. There's going to be this flood, but we've got this ark of shelter and safety here, and you can get on that and everything will be okay. But just like many people today, when you go to the New Testament, Jesus brought that up about in the days of Noah.
Yeah.
And people were just marrying and giving in marriage, just going about business as usual, and not really thinking that much about Jesus himself going to come again sometime. We need to be ready for that.
Yeah, and that's the caution there, especially in Matthew's gospel. I think the word that stood out to me the most in that lesson you did was the word sudden.
Yeah.
Right, several times in the New Testament. That's just like it was in the days of Noah. They were eating, they were drinking, they were given in marriage, they were being married off.
Right.
And it's when the Lord comes back, it's going to be just like any other day.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be any day.
Right. And there's a statement in there when you're talking about Noah, it said the door shut.
Yeah.
God shut the door. And I didn't bring this one out in that lesson, and maybe I should have, but I thought about those 10 virgins, and man, the door was shut. That's what it says right there.
It is interesting that Jesus uses Noah as an example.
Yeah.
And then in that parable of Matthew 25, he talks about the door being shut.
Right. Absolutely.
So anyway, I think there is some similarity there. And then we talked about, we finished this past Sunday with the Tower of Babel.
Right.
In your lesson, you just kind of reviewed everything.
Yeah.
So everything that we've done in the last 13 weeks, you did in about 30 minutes.
Right.
You just kind of you just kind of summed it up. Genesis 1 through 11.
I wondered how I was going to be able to do that, but it worked out.
Yeah,
okay.
it worked. It worked out good. When I think about Babel, I titled my sermon "An Empire of Me," and so maybe as we start a new year, that we think about someone other than ourselves. We're so tempted, I think, at times to just focus on us and do the things that we want to do, and just allow ourselves to be the center of, the center of our world, when God really needs to be put at the center. The one time when I got fired up really in the sermon Sunday is that when you start reading there in Genesis chapter 11 and verse 5, then God came down and saw, and God says, now this is what they're doing. They've unified in this. They've unified in being against me and in rebelling against me.
Right.
And they sought their own glory rather than seeking God's glory.
Yeah.
And the more I studied that passage last week, it just seemed to me that text could end up being a good New Year's sermon.
Yeah, and I liked your point there too. And this is a New Year's part of that, really.
Yeah.
Hey, keep God in your plans.
Yeah.
Don't let God out of your plans. Keep Him in those plans.
Come, let us and do this and that. Let's let's bake bricks and let's build a tower and let's build a city and
right.
And then from there I kind of went to James chapter 4. Come, let us go today or tomorrow, and go to such and such a city, buy and sell, and do this or that. And so, and what James is even dealing with there in James 4, beginning in verse 13, is that sometimes we get so preoccupied with the mundane things of life. I mean, we understand we have to work. That's not what is being condemned there in James chapter 4.
Right.
We understand that we have to save and invest, or put money back and make sure our family's taken care of. But sometimes even Christians are guilty of doing that to the detriment of following God.
Right. And and part of that in James 4, instead you ought to say, instead of saying I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that,
Yeah.
and you're not putting God in your plans. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord will,
That's right.
I will do this, or I will do that. And you did a good job on bringing that out.
Well, I've tried to get more in the habit in my own life of saying, Lord willing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or if the Lord wills, because we do have plans for tomorrow, or we do have plans for next week. Next week on Monday, one of my plans is going to Texas Roadhouse.
Yeah.
And
I'm right there with you.
and eating a steak. So we have that in our plans, but instead James says you ought to say if the Lord wills.
Yeah.
And it wasn't God's will that they build the tower and that they stay in the plain of Shinar. It was God's will when Noah and his family got off the ark. He says, multiply, fill the earth, scatter.
And I thought it was interesting that you brought that up. And in that summary that I did there, I went to Genesis 9:1 where he said that. And even before that, he reminded Noah, hey, listen, when you get off the ark, here's what I want you to do. So you use the C there, really confusion in that one. And I did the 4 C's. And I started there with creation and corruption,
catastrophe,
and then confusion there. So that was kind of part of that summary too. So we did that.
So we've finished Genesis 1 through 11. Where are we going now?
We are going to go to Genesis chapter 12, and
it's just.
So we're going to look at Abraham. We're going to look at God's calling of Abraham, Abraham's obedience, his faith. And looking forward to that. I think that's going to be a great study. I think it's going to cover Genesis 12 through 36 by the time we get through, maybe somewhere in that area.
A couple chapters are being left out just because of content or, genealogy. One chapter just has genealogy. So we're basically going like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then we're going to touch Job a little bit that last week where we dive in basically the patriarchs.
Yeah.
Right.
When
we think about the 3 ages of Bible history, you have the patriarchal age, you have the Mosaic age, and then you have the Christian age. So what we're going to do in this next quarter is deal with what we call the patriarchal age.
Right, which we actually gave the title there on Faith of Our Fathers.
There you go.
So which is good too, and there's even a song that deals with Faith of Our Fathers, Holy Faith, and we want to be faithful to God in our lives.
Yeah,
we want you to be faithful to God.
So that word patriarch is just a fancy word. It means the father. It means the head of the household, like patriarch or matriarch being the male leader of the house, or the mother, the female leader of the house. Mm-hmm. So the patriarchs. Well, let's just talk. We haven't rehearsed this. What are some lessons we learn from Abraham? Because that's where we're going to start, right? We're going to start in Genesis 12, dealing with Abraham. So maybe previewing this next study, beginning the first, was it the 5th? We start the first Sunday is the 5th of January. Is that right?
I think that's right.
Okay, so the first Sunday in January is when we're starting these the next 13 weeks, Faith of Our Fathers.
Yeah.
What are some lessons we can learn from Abraham? Just kind of off the top of your head there.
Well, one thing, God calls Abraham, of course, and Abraham's he's obedient to that call. He does what God wants him to do, and even in Hebrews 11 and other places like that, when you're talking about that call of Abraham, the faith that Abraham had to do what God said for him to do is really significant there. So at least those are things that I think about, that he was obedient to God's call. And we know he was on his way to Canaan, but listen, when you talk about that, Canaan's a big place where God's going to have to be a little bit more specific there. But when he's there, God lets him know this is where I want you to be. And so there are a lot of other things in that series that we're going to be looking at too. Yeah. His generosity, his care for people, because you've got Sodom and Gomorrah coming up there, and he's got his nephew there that he's concerned about. It's going to be a great study. We're really looking forward to it.
I think one of my favorite things in the study of Abraham is Abraham's unselfishness.
Yeah.
In Genesis 13, we'll study that pretty early on.
Right.
Where him and Lot basically stand up the mountain and
that's right.
And look around and which land do you want? And Lot's like, well, that's real green, that's real lush.
Right.
And so Abraham was fine with that. He was generous. He was unselfish. Mm-hmm. He let Lot make the choice. I guess another thing when we think about Abraham, probably Genesis chapter 22, mm-hmm. when he's commanded to sacrifice the promised son Isaac. Spoiler alert: he doesn't kill him.
Yeah.
Right. The angel stays the hand there, so I think he would have gone through with it. He'd already made up in his mind. When you look at Hebrews chapter 11, he'd made up in his mind that if he did kill him, that God would raise him.
Yeah, that's right.
From the dead. So, anyway, some great lessons coming up these next few weeks, with the next 13 weeks actually, with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then a couple weeks looking at Job. We don't really know when Job lived, but in Job chapter 1 and verse 5, he offered sacrifices, right, for his son. He served as the patriarch. Job's wealth was counted the same way that Abraham's wealth was counted, by looking at his flocks and other things. So it's easy to surmise when you compare Abraham and Job, that Job probably lived during the patriarchal age. There's no mention in the book of Job of the tabernacle or the Mosaic sacrifices or the Levitical priesthood,
right,
or anything like that. I think there's a good case that can be made when you look at some of the genealogies in the book of Genesis, that Job may have even been related to Abraham in some way, or at least some of the friends could have been related to Abraham in some way. Mm-hmm. You read the name Job, I think, in Genesis 42.
Yeah.
You read the name Jobab earlier in Genesis, and some of the Jewish theologians have suggested that the one maybe in 36 is referring to Job. But anyway, there is some connection there, some loose connection between Job and Abraham. Mm-hmm. But it's, he probably lived during the patriarchal age. It's just hard to nail it down, really.
Right.
Really more than that.
Now, there's something that I left out when we were talking about Abraham a while ago, and I think it's really important.
Okay, go ahead.
always remember God keeps His word.
Yep.
He makes promises and He keeps those promises. And that's what we see when we're dealing with Abraham's life. He called him, Abraham obeyed, but God said, I have a promise I'm going to make, and God keeps that promise and always does. So God's word is always true. We need to be obedient to that. We need to be faithful to Him in that. And hey, man, I want to encourage you to do that.
Yeah. That's a good study. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
God makes the promise to Abraham several times. He repeats the promise to Isaac. He repeats the promise to Jacob.
Right.
And when I've preached through the patriarchs, I've said, Abraham had Isaac, Isaac had Jacob, and Jacob had a bunch of sons.
Yeah, that's right.
And so then the nation, the nation of Israel really explodes when we get to looking at Jacob. But we'd love for you to come and be a part of what we're doing here at Malden Church of Christ, especially as we begin this next series, these next 13 weeks. And then after that, we'll go the New Testament for 6 months.
Yeah.
And then after that, we'll go the Old Testament for 6 months. Lord willing, that's the plan.
Amen.
So come and be a part of what we're doing here at Malden Church of Christ. God bless.
God bless. Happy New Year again.